Welcome, friends. My name is Silas Ollegario, and I'm the host of Think Onward, a podcast about books, studies, productivity, and lifestyle. Now, after the intro. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to this podcast. My name is Silas Ollegario, as you heard in the intro. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're catching this episode, this podcast. I don't know where you're listening this from. If you are listening from Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or maybe even YouTube. I don't know what part of the world you are, but I'm just glad you're here. For me, it's so nice. It's something that I pretty much look forward doing during my week. I've been struggling a little bit in finding the perfect timing for recording this podcast because my wife and I will live in a very noisy neighborhood, and my time to record this podcast is very limited. Although I love you guys, my wife is still my priority. I still have to work and study and etc. And so we need to find a perfect balance between a time of the day or the night that is quiet outside, not so many motorcycles and no traffic and etc. But also a moment of the day that allows me and gives me time to do other things that I also enjoy, like reading and like watching TV and catching a movie with my wife and etc. But I'm very glad I got to separate this maybe 20 to 25 minutes on this part of my day to record this podcast. It's especially because it is about a subject I really enjoy, which is reading. I was not going to record a podcast about reading. I wasn't going to record a podcast about any different kind of subject as well. I was going to do a book review about the book I read. I finished this week. It's called Your Life in My Hands. But anyway, this is going to be next week's podcast, next week's episode. Like 2 hours ago, I was talking to a friend, and he came up with this thing, and he asked me for a favor. and I found it kind of weird, not weird, but kind of funny. He asked me for a favor. Oh, look, Silas, I know you read lots of books, and I really wish my son could read more often. I really wish he could read more, because I never see him reading, and he doesn't read at all. And I'm kind of worried. He's like 13 and etc. And I said, look, let's start very slow. Do you read? And then he answered in the worst possible way I can imagine. Come on, man, I don't have time for reading. And it's so funny. And you're probably listening to this and, oh my God, I hate when people say this. Because when I kind of think two things when people tell me they don't have time for reading. It's like, okay, Silas, you have a lot of free time. Your life is so easy. That's why you read 50 books a year or whatever. And, man, that's not the reality. My life is not so... I cannot complain that my life is difficult and I have to do so many things and I'm so overwhelmed. No, definitely not. But most people who say they claim they don't have time for reading, actually, they don't want to find time for reading. And it's okay. I like to point out this first. I think it's okay if you don't like reading and you're okay with that. Some people don't like watching movies. Some people don't like some kind of music or whatever. So not liking books or not enjoying reading, it's pretty much okay, I think. So people shouldn't feel like they are obligated to read. But I hate this kind of excuse, If you don't want to read, don't read, and that's fine. But don't say that you don't read because you don't have time, because you're telling the person who reads that this person has all the time in the world, and that's why they read so many books. I guarantee you that's not the reality. That's not the correct way of approaching this. And that's one of the things I think about. The other one is, really? You don't have like 30 minutes a day You don't go to the bathroom. You don't stop to scroll through Instagram. It's kind of funny when people say they don't have time. I prefer to think that these people, they don't make time for reading. And again, that's fine. That's okay. And it got me thinking, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to record a podcast about this. Unfortunately, he's not the one. He's not the kind of person who's going to listen to this podcast because he doesn't speak English. And, well, as you guys know, or probably know, I'm Brazilian, and I live in Brazil still, at least for the next 46 days, until my wife and I move to Canada. But so he's not going to listen to this, but I am going to have a conversation with him where I'm going to explain these things to him, and maybe he will consider, and maybe he will have a better approach with his son. Because it's kind of weird for me when you're trying to, I know as a parent, I know parents do this, and because they are thinking about the well-being of their kids and whatever, and they want their kids to read more often, or at least to read at all. And then they try to find people that might persuade their kids to reading, but they don't read themselves, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of funny when you are trying to make your kid do something that you don't do, and but I'm gonna have a conversation with him about this in the future, maybe next week. But I want to talk about this, about reading, and now about reading more books, because at the end of this podcast, I do have something that I would like to share with you that is news. And it is funny when people tell me they don't have time for reading. Or people say they don't have time for reading, or, oh my God, there are so many books to read. Because everybody loves going to those bookstores. In Brazil, we have those fancy bookstores that are in the middle of the big malls. They smell so good, and the ambience and the temperature, everything is so appealing and so nice. And even if you don't like books, people like to go to these places and touch the books. And I agree with this. There are so many books in the world, thousands, maybe millions of books. And there's definitely not enough time to read them all. But I'm the kind of person who I don't want to get into the end of my life and say, oh my God, I wish I had read more books. And here's the thing that I'm going to tell you: if you're struggling with this thing about reading more, if you're new at this journey of reading more books, and if you're still stuck in that one book a year, if you consider yourself a slow reader, or even maybe an average speed reader, I don't know, but you still struggle with reading more often and etc. I did a very fast math. I'm not going to even break down everything that I did, but I'm just going to be very, very conservative here. And I wrote this down. If you consider yourself an average speed reader, okay, I'm not going to say slow reader, but I'm going to say an average speed reader. And you separate 30 minutes a day for the next 50 to 55 years. And I'm considering this number, 50, 55 years, based on you being in your 30s today, like me. I'm 33 years old. So considering you're going to live until you're 90, okay? If you read 30 minutes a day, you can read from now until the day you die at least 1,000 books. I'm going to let that sink in. And again, just considering you are a slow or average speed reader. The thing is that people say they don't have time to read. And again, what I understand from this is that people don't want to make time for reading. We live in what so many people consider to be the golden age of content. The feeling is that some people might even want to start reading books, but they just get caught up on whatever it is they are doing. As an example, I just talking about Instagram. I think it was like 1 or 2 months ago, I decided to limit my Instagram time to 30 minutes. And of course, the iPhone, it lets you do this. But when I hit 30 minutes, which is very fast, I'm just there scrolling, laughing, following my friends who travel or who live abroad, whatever. And after 30 minutes, it goes by very fast. Oh my God, really? Already? They give me the option to extend for one last minute in case I'm just messaging someone and I want to finish. Or maybe even add another 15 minutes. Or ignore the limit for the day. I cannot tell you how many times I've ignored the limit. And I went so much more. I went overboard, 30 minutes became 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. And it's so easy to do this. So maybe the problem is that Instagram and Facebook, WhatsApp and Snapchat, it's so easy to do this kind of stuff that we think it's better than reading books, because maybe reading books is not something that is so easy. And I want to talk to you about a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. I don't want to talk about the book, but I want to talk to you about something that he said in his book. One of the things he said in the book is that habits emerge because our brain is constantly looking for ways to save effort. So scrolling through your Instagram page and using, and going through Facebook and etc. is so much easier than picking up a book and reading. But that's easy because we decide it's easy. Books are small, or they can be small. You can carry the books in your purse, in your briefcase, in your backpack. They can be next to your bed. They can be over your desk in your office. It's not something that is very complicated. And what we need is creating a habit and having consistency. Because, that's the key for a habit, right? Consistency. Because if it's not consistent, then it's not a habit. And that is why there's this whole thing called minimum viable effort. And this is very interesting. Let me give an example. If you want to start flossing more, okay? Instead of deciding, I'm going to floss every day of this week. When you don't have this habit, it's kind of ridiculous to establish this goal. So the minimum viable effort says that you should start by flossing one tooth. That's right, one tooth. It's kind of weird, right? But, that's the minimum viable effort, because you cannot say that you don't have time to floss one tooth. You start with one tooth this day, maybe one tooth next day, maybe you can skip to two tooth and then 5 and whatever, and all of a sudden you created this habit. There's a book called Atomic Habits, and I have a review of this book here in this podcast and also on my YouTube channel. I love James Clear, and he's a fantastic author. And this book, Atomic Habits, it tells us about making something simple. Making simple. I think that's the chapter of the book. Make it simple. So you should make a new habit so simple that you can't not do it. Oh my God, I'm such a loser. I cannot floss one tooth. What's wrong with me? So, I would like to, and I have this written down again. I would like to, talking about habits, I would like to reference this author, Herman Melville, which you probably already know the guy who wrote Moby Dick. And there's a habit thing in his book. And let me read for you. Yet habit. Strange thing. What cannot habit accomplish? And this is maybe for you. Maybe maybe you needed to listen to this. It's so easy in our lives to establish something and put barriers for ourselves. We instead of making things simple, we decide to make things more complicated every single day. Another example, and this is a personal example. I gained weight since I got married 40 years ago, and every time I look myself in the mirror, I hate what I see. But until I decide to change my habits, the way I exercise, or the amount of days I exercise in a week, and the things that I eat, and the time that I eat, and my resting, and etc., that's not going to change. I need to make an effort so I can change the way I look. So if changing the way I look is already an effort. I should make this effort simple. Okay, if I'm struggling going to the gym, so instead of putting my flip flops when I arrive from work, maybe the thing that I should do is I should put put on my shoes, my gym shoes, and already have my clothes here separated. So I'm avoiding the friction. I'm actually creating more space so my mind is ready for that new habit. And instead of putting this thing, I'm going to the gym every single day of the week. No, this week I'm going once. After you go once, you kind of feel like, oh, okay, I did it. It's so nice. The same thing I think can be accomplished when we're talking about books. I don't think, in the beginning of this episode, I said that if you don't like reading, that's okay, that's fine. You're not obligated to read. But people who want to read, there are so many tactics, so many things that you can do so you can read more. And when I say more, I mean really more. Not maybe go from 1 book a year to 5. And, well, it's not that complicated. Again, I said that 30 minutes a day for the next 55 years can get you to 1,000 books. That's absolutely amazing. But then comes the question, okay, what kind of books should I read? And that's my favorite answer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what books you're reading. It doesn't matter if you're reading fiction, fantasy, or if you're reading, productivity books, or self-help books. Doesn't matter. Religious books. Reading is something that should be nice, something that you should enjoy. And I'm gonna tell you about something that Dr. Ruth J. Simmons says once. I think I watched an interview with her, and she said something very interesting. She said, in her opinion, reading widely is much more important than reading this or that book. No, the book itself matters less than the act of reading. Because there are so many lists. 15 books you should read, 100 books you read before you die. The fact is that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Reading is so much more important. And because we do not separate enough time in our days to read, we are missing so many things in life. We have a culture today that it is not just in Brazil, it's not just in Canada, it's not just in rich or developing countries. We have this busyness of this being busy culture. And one thing that I've been learning is that being busy does not make our lives meaningful. Actually, being busy all the time diminishes the quality of our lives. We have less and less time to do what we want. And we have more and more tasks and to-do lists. But then when we do not have this to-do list or these tasks, we decide for what is easier in our brain, which is just scrolling through social media. Take that thing that is don't have to think about anything. You just have to use your finger, use your thumb, and then see and like and follow people all over the world. But where's the meaning of this? Again, maybe if you read something that is not important, you might think, okay, but I prefer staying on social media than reading this kind of book. That's fine. But I think nobody can deny that reading makes us more interesting when we have a conversation. I don't know when was the last time that you caught yourself in the middle of a moment that you have no internet, maybe no electricity, maybe you're in a place that you have to talk to people instead of just staying by yourself on your phone. I like Mark Twain's sentence. I don't know when he said this. Mark Twain, in case you don't know, he was a writer. And he has this very famous sentence that I like to think about it. The man who does not read has no advantage over the man who cannot read. And I got this very seriously for my life. I decided that I have this opportunity. I have well, in my case, I enjoy reading. So if I enjoy reading and I can read, I should read, you know? Maybe my biggest tip that I have for you who are struggling to read more books is that make sure you're enjoying it. Make sure that you are reading things that interest you. Make sure that you read things that you like, subjects that you like. If you're reading for fun, that's the best thing. Maybe you don't have to read for work. That is awesome. You can only read because you feel good. You can only read because you like it, and that is great. And well, George R. R. Martin has a very nice sentence about reading and about books, but I'm gonna tell you after the end of this episode. I have another stuff that I want to share with you. As you guys probably know, in case you follow me for some time now, in the end of the year, I think it was around October or November, I shared one thing here on this channel, on this podcast. I shared that I started writing my own book. Yes, I was very excited back then. I still am, actually. When you say back then, it means like I kind of think that you're not anymore, but I'm very excited to share that I've started, and this week has been very great for me in terms of this, because I've noticed that sometimes I'm taking such a long time to sleep, and because my schedule was kind of crazy for me, and I was like sleeping in the morning, so I was like going to bed at 4 a.m. So I was like an owl. But the thing is that I decided to use that moment of quiet and peace because nobody's awake and there's no noise, and sometimes I think it just felt like inspired to write so many things, and I would like to update you guys on how this is going. I decided about the title of the book, at least for now, right? And decided about the name of the characters, how many characters I'm going to talk about in the book, and the chapters, how I divided. And I already started the prologue in chapter 1, and I'm so excited about this. I remember, if you listen to this episode, this podcast 1 year ago, you will see that I used to talk a lot about consistency, about starting now. I do have a YouTube video that is, I think, start before you think you're ready. And I got this very seriously for myself. Instead of waiting until I finish school or waiting until I have everything that I need, the right computer, the perfect keyboard, the perfect table, and the perfect chair, I decided I'm going to write these things that I have in my mind anytime that I think about them. And I've been thinking about my book, about the story, a lot this last week. And I'm going to be honest, I was very, not concerned or scared, but I was like, oh my God, what's happening? Where this creativity juices were not flowing. And I was like, thinking about this for some time, but I decided not to push it. It will come. Inspiration will come, and this week has been amazing in terms of this. I decided not to put goals for this because I want it to be very organic. I want it to be nice and interesting. I don't have a deadline. I don't have a timeline for anything. I just want to write a book. If it's going to take me 2 or 3 or 5 years, it doesn't matter for me. I'm just very glad I got to do this because I decided to enjoy the process more than just enjoying when the book is here in my hands. Now I can feel it and I can give it to the people that I like, and maybe they will enjoy reading it. But yeah, that's my update. I know it's a short one, but it got me so excited. It is so nice to have projects and to see the projects developing. Especially when it's a project that I don't need anybody else. I don't need anything else. I don't need to wait for some money, or I need to wait for someone to help me. No, it's just something that I can put the things that I'm having in my mind, things that are on my mind, about stories, about characters, and I've been thinking about these characters a lot. And it's funny. I don't know how people actually have. I follow some people who are writers. Some of them are famous writers. Some of them are not so famous, and I follow them on YouTube, and I listen to their their stories, and I listen to the way they teach writing, and I think, oh my God, that's so interesting. And when people ask questions to these authors, some people struggle a lot on writing, and I decided, you know what, I don't want to have this kind of struggle. Because I'm not a professional writer, because that's not the way I make a living, I don't want to push myself too hard. I want this to be relaxing. I want this to be nice. And I'm very glad to say that things are going great, in a very nice way, very organic speed. And, well, I just felt like this was the place I decided to share about this in firsthand. And so now that I have some updates on that, I do have this thing to tell you. Maybe in the future, once I'm done with the story, maybe I can come here and read like chapter 1 or the prologue or the beginning of the prologue. I don't know. But that's a talk for the future. And I run because I'm talking about books and reading this entire episode. I want to finish this episode with a sentence, with a quote from one of my favorite authors that you know, George R.R. Martin. And he has this thing that got me thinking since I think I heard him in an interview saying this 3 days ago, and it got stuck in my mind, and I want you to have this in your mind as well. Sleeping is good, but books are better. It's very simple, but at the same time, very nice. And well, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you had a good time. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you do read more books. And I hope that whatever it is, that the habit that you need to be, having this 2022, it's still April. I think we can still call the beginning of the year, right? I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you again next week. Okay? Bye-bye.